This is Find Your Dream Job, the podcast that helps you get hired, have the career you want, and make a difference in life. I'm Mac Pritchard, your host and publisher of Mac's List. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Ben Forstag, Managing Director of Mac's List, and Jenna Forstrom, our Community Manager. This week we're talking about how to save time and energy by maximizing the productivity of your job search. Our show is brought to you by our book, Land Your Dream Job in Portland and Beyond. To learn more about the new 2016 edition, visit maxlist.org/book. And you can also special order the book now in more than 600 Barnes & Noble stores across the country. Job hunting takes a lot of time, energy, and attention to detail. You might start your day reading several job boards. Then you complete and send a job application. Next, you email requests for informational meetings, and that's followed by writing thank you notes. After all that, perhaps you have a job interview. But your day isn't over yet. Your evening may include a networking event too. How do you juggle all this activity while keeping your energy and enthusiasm high? Above all, are you using your time as well as you could? This week we're talking with Mike Vardy, a productivity expert. He'll share his best tips for how you can use your time to get the results you want. Want to know where your time is going? Ben has an app that knows. Our resource of the week tells you how much of your day you may be spending on Facebook and other websites. As we record this show, it's commencement season. One of our listeners wonders if she should take an internship after earning a college degree. Jenna has the answer. So let's turn to the Mac's List team. I'm curious, Jenna, Ben, what's your favorite productivity hack for job hunters, or one that maybe you each used when you've been looking for work?
I've got a simple one. That's just keep a spreadsheet of all the jobs you apply for. The company name, the job title, the contact, the day you applied, notes about that job, because you think you're going to keep track of everything in Gmail or Hotmail or whatever your email client is, but everything gets mixed up pretty quickly. And it's nice to have one place where you can keep track of things, especially if there's like critical dates that are outlined in the job description. It gives you a reference point on when to go back and check in with the employer.
And how about you, Jenna?
My productivity tip would be to use the timer on your phone. So when I was job hunting, I made a mental commitment that Monday through Friday, I would spend an hour job hunting, an hour working on my house, like doing home improvement projects, an hour working out, an hour writing, because that was a skill I wanted to get better at. And then, because I come from a faith background, an hour serving the community. And so I would just set my timer on my phone for an hour, and I would look on job boards, or I knew I was going to go to an informational interview. So I would time that out, and then I would just cross it out. And that helped me stay sane, because I think you can totally end up, when you're job hunting, down the rabbit hole of like 3 job boards deep, and then you're applying for like a junior level role, and you're filling out an application, and they're asking like your GPA from high school, and you're like, wait a second, I'm slightly above this. So it helps you just, as soon as the timer ended, I was like, I did my hour, like that's enough for today, and I can move on to going and working out for an hour, or painting, my bathroom or something, some sort of project. So I always felt like I was accomplishing something, and that helped me keep my spirits up. What
I like about that is every day you're doing a little bit, and every day you're making progress, not on one front, but on a number of different fronts.
My house has never been cleaner than when I was unemployed.
Yeah, I too had a very clean house during my periods of unemployment, and I also, in pre-internet days, was up to speed on all the state, local, and international news I could find in the newspaper. And Ben, I'm a big fan of spreadsheets too. I know we're going to talk about to-do lists, but to Jenna's example, one thing I love about to-do lists is being able to cross things off and feeling a sense of accomplishment when I do that. I find both to-do lists and spreadsheets help me stay on task.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, let's turn to Ben, who every week is out there exploring the internet on your behalf, and he's looking for podcasts, tools, websites, blogs, things that can help you in your job search. So, Ben, what have you uncovered for us this week?
So this week, I want to talk about an app that really speaks to something Jenna just talked about, which is time management and how you're spending your time in your job search. And I found this really cool app online. It's called Rescue Time. And Rescue Time is an app that you can install on your desktop, and it passively tracks your behavior to help you understand your daily habits and to be more productive. And basically, the app tracks how long you use certain websites and other applications. And it lets you set goals for how you use your time on the computer and sends you notifications when you're spending too much time doing a specific action. And I'll just say here, you decide how much too much time is, and the computer is just kind of enforcing the rules you've set for yourself.
Okay, so Ben, I'm a job seeker. How is this going to help me manage my time?
So in a couple of ways. First, it helps you think about how you're spending your time in your job search. We've talked a lot about the 80-20 rule, where you should be spending 80% of your time doing networking and getting out there and talking to people, and only 20% of your time sitting on job boards and looking for jobs. And in our conversations, we know that a lot of job seekers flip that around, right? They're spending 80% of their time looking on job boards. And I'll be honest, that's not a very fruitful approach to the job search. So an app like Rescue Time can let you know when you're really spending too much time doing the least likely activities that are going to land you a job. So looking on job boards and things like that. The other thing that I think this could help you with is wasting time doing other internet activities out there. So, I'll tell you, my wife, for example, she used a similar app to this, and she just uses it to turn off Facebook for 4 hours a day, right? And it's because anytime when she's doing her job, she's a writer, anytime she reaches any roadblock, she'll just go to Facebook and think, oh, I'll come back to this writing task, right? And then you get sidetracked on goofing around on Facebook or looking at the news or people.com.
You go down the rabbit hole.
Right? And so you can just kind of lock out those sites for a set amount of time to get that distraction away from you. And for some people, that's a really important thing. So again, I think this is a really nice little app. It's free. A basic version of Rescue Time you can just download anytime. There is a premium version with some more features, but that's up to you to decide whether you need that functionality. I'd encourage you to check it out. It's at rescuetime.com.
Okay, great suggestion. And I have to ask, since you shared your wife Erin's favorite rabbit hole, Facebook, what's yours, Ben?
There's a couple baseball blogs that I go to pretty regularly, and the blog itself is not the problem. It's the comment section where you can just kind of get dragged into debates and conversations that go on forever.
Yeah. How about you, Jenna?
I'm definitely guilty of BuzzFeed princess quizzes. Today I took a castle one. Can you identify this Disney princess castle? And I almost scored 100%.
Wow. So that's one of your secret superpowers. Okay. For me, it's Instagram and the Turner Classic Movie page. I can spend a lot of time reading about Warner Brothers stars of the 1930s, but more than you want to know. All right. Well, now it's time actually to turn to you, our listeners. But before we do that, if you have a suggestion for Ben, please email him. His address is ben@maxlist.org. And we'd love to hear from you, and we may use your idea on a future show. So, Jenna, what do you have in the Max List mailbag this week?
This week, our question comes from Hannah Alcad. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. She says, I have some great experience in my industry, but I'm a graduating senior. How do I convince an employer that I am worth a job and not an internship at their company? Should I apply for both positions, intern and job postings, or just the job position? I think that's a great question. And I hear this a lot. Either people are graduating students and they don't have a lot of experience and they're told that they're not qualified, or they're a couple years or more than a couple years into their position and they're applying for jobs or re-entering the workforce and they're told that they're overqualified. So either way, I think these tips will help Hannah and other job seekers. I would say directly to Hannah, don't apply for the internship because you don't want it. So don't waste your time, don't waste their time. And that helps eliminate that problem. But if you're trying to convince an employer that you're qualified for the role, just talk about all your strengths. A couple weeks ago, we interviewed Susan Rich about headlines and just going through and being like, I have 4 years of experience in marketing, or, that counts for college time. Like, you've been taking college classes. So talk about your strengths in really direct ways so that a job seeker can't really argue with it. And then talk about your experiences and the success stories. So that would be my tip. You guys have any tips?
I agree with you, Jenna. I think it's always, if you're qualified for the permanent position, apply for it, aim high. You may get into the interview process and they might offer you a ask you if you're interested in other opportunities that if that position has been filled, but you should, I think, go for if you're qualified for that job, that's the one you should chase.
I agree with that. I would definitely not apply for both because I think you're underselling your opportunity as an employee if you're also applying for that internship. Hannah here says that she's got a lot of industry experience, so I assume she's done internships in the past or has had some other work experience. Really focusing on that and pulling out the meaningful transferable experiences for the job that you're applying for would seem to be the best solution there.
Great. Okay, well, thank you, Jenna, and thank you, Ben. And if you have a question for Jenna, please email her. Her email address is Jenna, Jenna, @maxlist.org. And these segments with Jenna and Ben are sponsored by the 2016 edition of Land Your Dream Job in Portland and beyond. Now, we've made our book even better. We've added new content this year, and we're offering it in the formats that you want. For the first time ever, you can read Land Your Dream Job in Portland and beyond as a paperback, or you can download it onto your Kindle, Nook, or iPad. Whatever the format, our book gives you the tools and tips you need to get meaningful work that makes a difference. Find out for yourself. Visit maxlist.org/book. Now let's turn to this week's guest expert, Mike Vardy. Mike Vardy is the founder of Productivist, and he is a former managing editor at Lifehack. Mike is also the author of several books and has contributed articles on productivity to 99U, Lifehacker, The Next Web, Success Magazine, and the Huffington Post. And Mike has spoken at New Media Expo, TEDx Victoria, South by Southwest, and Creative Live. He joins us from Victoria, British Columbia in Canada. Mike, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. Now, Mike, a good job search has a lot of moving parts. You know, there are daily to-do lists, frequent appointments, lots of applications, written material, and follow-up. How can job seekers avoid getting overwhelmed?
Well, one of the things that they can do is really do a strategy that I call theming your time. So what it boils down to is rather than trying to tackle each kind of search as its own entity, go by mode, work by mode, figure out how you can batch your time so that if you're going to, let's say, for example, updating your resume, you're going to do some online research, or you're going to make a bunch of phone calls, like batch those times together rather than focus on singular jobs as you go along. I think that's a big mistake people make, because what happens is that the time and energy that it takes to shift gears or multitask, if people want to use that route, is that you end up losing some steam along the way. You aren't getting to the state of flow, as author Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi would say. You don't get into this state where you can do your best work on one particular area because you're jumping all over the place. It'd be kind of like going into a grocery store and shopping by your meal plan for day of the week instead of shopping by the different categories of the grocery store. You would never shop like that. So the way we tackle our work, our to-do lists, and often things like job searches, we tend to do that, shopping by day of the week thing, and it doesn't really work as effectively. So I would suggest that people theme their time and block out certain times where they're going to focus on phone calls, focus on research, focus on updating their resume, focus on, learning about a particular skill that they may want to increase. That kind of thing can really maximize the time that you have and also give you more focus on the particular skill or particular task that you want to accomplish.
Okay, so look at themes and batch your time. And let's talk about calendars and to-do lists. A lot of people will start their day with a to-do list. Why is that maybe not a good idea and the best way to organize your time, Mike?
Well, the to-do list is one part of the puzzle. I think a lot of people, what they do is they either work exclusively by the calendar, so they'll block out their entire day and they'll hyper schedule themselves, or they'll work exclusively by the to-do list and will only look at the to-do list in a way that it basically is like a laundry list where they just go down bit by bit by bit. And the problem with just using a to-do list that's a simple to-do list, it's just one big long list, is that it's not segmented properly. Again, you can't leverage the idea of the different modes that you need to be in. So if you're going to use a to-do list, it's only part of the equation. Look at your calendar first. Your calendar is kind of the guideline of the day. Okay, what do you have? Do you have appointments? Do you have job interviews? Do you have obligations that fall outside of that you need to be at a specific place at a specific time? And most of those things occur when you are either relying or are relied upon by someone else. So if you and I are scheduled to talk at this point in time, if I showed up a half hour later, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So that would be something that would go in a calendar. Whereas preparing for this would go in a to-do list. And then if I was preparing for an interview or preparing for, to go for a job interview, for example, I would then have a mode, say like, job prep would be the modality, or reading or something like that. So having a to-do list is fine, but you need to have it as part of the puzzle, part of the equation, and it needs to be made better. It needs to be segmented either by, and you can use several different things to separate it, but I like to use what I call mode-based work to separate it. And there are 5 categories of modes that I discuss. There's theme-based modes, which I touched on a little bit earlier. Then there's resource-based modes. So do you need to be in Microsoft Word to do this? Well, that's a resource. Do you need to talk to a certain person? Well, that person is a resource. Do you need to be in email? Well, email is a resource. Activity-based modes, so things like writing, reading, anything ending in ing. There's energy-based modes, so are you feeling high energy or low energy? Maybe you're sick, so if you're not feeling 100%, you're going to want to do low energy tasks. If you are a morning person and it's early in the day, you want to tackle those high energy tasks first. Maybe sort your to-do list by high energy first, and then do your low energy tasks later in the day. Or if you're like me, more of a night owl, you'll flip that around. And then time-based modes. If you've got time between 2 job interviews or between 2 particular obligations, instead of trying to look and scan through your to-do list on its own, give each of those tasks a time allotment. And I suggest maybe 3 time allotments. I normally go with 5 minutes, 15 minutes, and 30 minutes. And that way, if you have, let's say you have a half hour between interviews, you could say, I have a half hour. Let me look at how many 5-minute tasks I can complete during that time period. And it just allows you to look at your to-do list through a fresh set of eyes, and you're not going to be as overwhelmed by all those things on your list because you're segmenting them out and giving yourself a better chance to complete them.
So it's a great approach. How can you make that approach? 5 different themes, juggling a calendar and a to-do list. How can you do that in as a simple way as possible? So that in doing this work, Mike?
Well, with the calendar is the starting point. So the calendar, using a calendar, whether it's an electronic calendar or a paper calendar, those things they're already ingrained with us. It's just how we use them, what intent we want to use them with. So when I ask people or suggest people use a calendar, I suggest they use it for agreements they made with themselves or with others that rely on time-dependent, obligations. So, for example, again, a doctor's appointment, a job interview, those things would appear on the calendar because they are commitments that you can't move. And so that's the thing you look at first. A to-do list, the way I segment out a to-do list, and it doesn't matter what tool you use, is I organize by mode, action, and then project. So I would write down on a sheet of paper the M for mode, which is M at the top of the first column. A is for action, that's the main column, and P is for project. So I call that my daily map. And basically what happens is when you write down a to-do list normally, you just write down the action, the A. Well, all I'm suggesting at this point is that when you look at those actions, every action should have a mode. So if you are going to email a prospective employer, the mode that you would attach to that might be email. It might be low energy. Those are very subjective. But the bottom line is that every action should get a mode. And then some actions require a project. So if you're working on a particular job, like say it's the job search project, well, then that would be a large project you would put them under. Or maybe it's a particular type of job search you're looking for, and that could be the project. So it doesn't have to be complicated. It just needs to be segmented in a way that makes sense to you. And most people don't use all 5 categories of themes because not all categories of themes will work for everyone. So I suggest that people start off with time-based ones initially, and maybe look at some of the other ones like energy-based or resource-based, and use one of those as your modes as you go along, because then what you do is you group those tasks by mode, and then you could see, okay, what tasks am I going to accomplish right now? Well, here are the 5 emails I need to send. Let me do all those emails. Oh, here are the 4 low energy tasks that I can do right now. Let me do those. That's how I suggest you put it together. And you could do that with an Excel spreadsheet. You could do it with paper. You could do it with any task management application or to-do list application worth its salt. Any of those can accomplish this. And like I said, it doesn't have to be complicated. It just needs to be consistent.
So using tools like this that you've outlined, how can people celebrate either accomplishment or measure their progress as they go along?
Well, if they're making these tasks achievable through the use of mode-based work, and again, theming their time is part of it. I like to use a digital task manager for the ability to see how long and how far your progress has been made across a longer period of time. So, digital task managers are great for that. Tools like Todoist, Asana, Trello. You can see progress when it comes to those tasks in a digital task manager. But the other way is by journaling. I'm a big believer in journaling. In fact, I've been journaling for years, and I used to work with people back when I was working in the corporate world, as well as even with clients I'm working with today. Some of the highest success achievers journal every single day. And it, again, doesn't have to be complicated. Doesn't have to be an essay. It just needs to say, hey, here's what happened today. Here's where I was. Here's where I am now. And here's how I got here. And then planning for the day ahead. So my journal entries are often, 1 to 2 paragraphs long, and some have been as short as a few sentences. But it allows me to course correct and see the progress as I go, coupled with my digital task manager showing me how many tasks I've checked off, or even on a paper list, you can see how many tasks you've gotten through. But I think that journaling, that reflection, that review, which is really a daily review when you journal, it really allows you to see where you've been, where you're going, and keeps you on course as opposed to deviating too far off course, especially when you're trying to find a job, because the worst thing you can do is stray too far off course when you're trying to really move forward and land that particular objective.
Well, tell us a little more about journaling. Are there practical tips? Do you, for example, recommend writing for just a limited amount of time every day? Are there regular questions you encourage people to look at? And should they go back and review past entries on a regular basis?
My biggest thing is to make sure that you journal at least. My biggest thing is to journal consistently as part of your morning and or evening routine. That's a big thing. So this is one of those things you can tack onto your morning or evening routine. I know a lot of people who journal in the morning, and that's how they get their day started, by visioning what's going to happen, and then they journal again at the end of the day to say, here's what happened. For me, the biggest thing is to journal at the end of the day, because that recaps your day. And kind of the questions you can ask is kind of like the old Ben Franklin question: what good have I done today? That kind of question. You could also suggest, how many tasks did I complete today? You could review the to-do list that you had and say, hey, here are the tasks I completed. Another thing you can do, and this is something I recommend, especially for people once they start to have less things on their calendar, is to look at their calendar and recount how those meetings went, how those discussions went, how those agreements went during the day. And then, yes, I do recommend that you go back and review your journal entries. I actually do a regular review. I call it the rapid review, and I do it every 2 weeks. And it involves reading my journal entries before I actually go through any upcoming obligations and any upcoming tasks that I need to work on. And then I further read my journal every quarter just to get a sense of how far I've come in that period of time, because we often forget. We get so caught up in the day-to-day that we don't take the time to celebrate how far we've come, whether it's in the week, the months, or even the year. At the end of every year, January, one of my big things I do in January is I read my journal for the entire year previous. And it blows my mind, some of the things that I've done, or some of the thoughts I've had, or even some of the things I've forgotten that happened. I think that that's a really important part of the process, because that way you can look back and, again, really move forward consistently in the direction that you want to move in. So those are some of the things I would do. And again, the big thing is to do it consistently. Some people are going to want to ask very specific questions, and the more specific you are, the more detailed your journal entry will be. And others can be just as simple as, what good did I do this day? How did this day treat me? And I also recommend that people, when you're doing a journal entry, it shouldn't just be about work. I mean, that's not what we're here to do. I mean, work is part of our lives, but it's not our entire lives. So when I journal, I actually infuse personal stuff in there as well. And another thing that I do is most journaling applications. So, example, Day One on Mac and iOS, Journey on Android, and then you could even use a tool like Evernote. I take a picture to accompany the journal entry. That way, if I'm stuck, I can at least look at the picture, and then that can spur on some entry or some more material for the journal entry.
Well, great. Good tips. And I think reflection is always powerful, whether it's about a job search or other goals and relationships in your life. Now, we need to start wrapping up. Mike, but I'm as you know, there's just no end of things that you can do when job hunting. The list could be infinite, and part of what we've talked about today is setting priorities and managing your time. But how do you avoid burnout? What is your best advice about that?
When it comes, burnout's tricky because we see a lot of things on our list and we feel that we have to do them all. And I remember talking with David Allen when I was, a couple of years ago after I've been in this game for a while. And the quote that he said that he's mentioned before that stood out with me is, "You can do anything, but you can't do everything." And I think that that's something that's really, really important. I know when I was working for Costco, I tried to be the Costco manager that was also trying to raise a family that was trying to embark on an entrepreneurial career, and it didn't all work, and I burned out quickly, and I had to make some hard choices. The hard choice I made was leaving Costco, which was a stable job, but it was the right choice to make because a decade later, now I'm doing what I get to do, and I have the freedom that I have to make all these, to sit down and talk with you and help other people be more productive. So I think one of the biggest things you can do to avoid burnout is to really get real with the tasks that you have on your list, and don't try to achieve everything in one single day, and break down those tasks into manageable tasks. A lot of people will put things on their list like write book. Well, that's a big task. That's not a task.
That is a big task.
That's not a task. That's a project. Like, really look at the things you're writing down and making sure that they're broken down into something that's manageable. Because when you do that, you give yourself two things. You get yourself perspective to see, okay, how much do I really have on my plate? And then secondly, you get to see, okay, is this something that's really useful? Is this something that I really need to do? Do I need to do it myself? Can I delegate it? Can I defer it? Is it something I can drop off the plate altogether? So I think it's important to get real and then really understand, like, disconnect and take a look at that to-do list. Take a look at the tasks that are on your list and find out, are they too big? Do they need to be broken down? And then secondly, can I move them to the next day or the next week or to someone else? Because, I mean, we're just trying to get through today most of the time. But the problem is today is so full that we end up moving all of today's stuff to tomorrow, and tomorrow never really comes. So I would recommend that people look at their task list and really ask themselves, is this the smallest that this can be? Is, phoning somebody about a job interview is a single task. It's part of a much larger project. Driving a car is a project. Really, when you break it down, going grocery shopping is a project. You don't have to get that granular, but you have to get granular enough that it personally will allow you to move forward and not feel overwhelmed by the process. And that's the key about productivity, because even when business isn't personal, rather, productivity really is. You need to make it yours, and only you can decide, how big a task is versus how small it is. So really take a look at that, because that will help you stave off overwhelm, and it will allow you to really move forward with purpose, intention, and attention.
Well, great. I think that's a perfect place to stop. Now, Mike, tell us what's coming up next for you.
Well, I'm working on a project for my Beyond Productivity program is getting a big revamp. So that's what I'm working on right now. And a lot of my stuff's happening if you go to mikevardy.com/now, that's my now page. It tells you what's going on in my world in general. Or you can just go to my company website, productivityist.com, and there's lots of cool stuff going on there. I'm speaking at a couple of events. I'm going to be speaking in Portland, actually, at the World Domination Summit in August. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Good. Well, we'll be sure to include links to all of those sites, including details about your August speaking engagement in Portland and other places, in the show notes. And I know people can also find you, in addition to your website, at your Twitter page, which is at Mike Vardy. That's Vardy with a V. And so we encourage people to connect with you. Mike, thanks so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me. I really had a great time.
Great. We're back in the Max List studio with Ben and Jenna. Now, tell me, you two, what are some important points you heard Mike make? Ben?
I really liked his point about organizing activities based on your energy level, going from like high energy to low energy, because I think so many times, even in my job now, like I end up doing the low energy things first thing in the morning, and then I frankly run out of energy for the high energy things later on in the day. So thinking about it strategically ahead of time, there's a lot of value to that, I think.
Yeah, you're definitely a morning person, Ben.
I am.
Yeah, for the benefit of our listeners, when I stroll in here at 7:30 or 8 Ben is often already here, so I know you do your best work in the morning.
The coffee's already made by the time you come in.
Which we appreciate. Thank you.
Yes, you do many, many things well, including making a great cup of coffee. How about you, Jenna?
I, on top of his both digital and analog suggestions for applications to use, which will be included in the show notes, I really just appreciated how he talked about how professionals and smart people journal, because that's something I'm working on personally. I'm not a journaler. I guess I am reflective, but not in a written way. Like, I think about journaling and I just think it's this huge task to remember everything that you did throughout the day, but I know it's something a lot of successful people do, so I'm trying to do it. And we had a whole offline conversation about bullet journals, which I'm trying to do and I love it so far, but just the act of journaling. And then I really liked his point about adding a photo, because I think that's something that's really good, especially since I already do that on Instagram on the regular basis. So just tying it to a journal to reflect on what happened that day and why it was great.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of journaling too, and I've over the years intermittently kept some kind of journal going back to grade school days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they're all tucked away in a box, and I do go back and look at them occasionally, but not too often. All right, well, thank you all, and thank you, our listeners, for joining us. If you like what you hear on the show, you can help us by leaving a review and a rating at iTunes. This helps others discover the show and lets us know how we can best serve your job needs. One of the reviews we received recently is from listener PDX Jenna, and she writes, "I love this podcast because it offers actionable tips and guidance from the experts, tips that job seekers can use right away to find a meaningful and fulfilling position."
PDX Jenna, is this you?
No. Honestly, it's not. But I should write a review so you can read it out loud.
You're welcome.
There's another Jenna. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, PDX Jenna, for that review, and thanks to the scores of other listeners who've left a review. Please take a moment to leave your own comments and rating. You can do so by visiting www.maxlist.org/iTunes. Thank you again for listening. We'll be back next Wednesday with more tools and tips you can use to find your dream job.